Spoke to, say, Paulo Coelho, who's sold 100 million plus copies, The Alchemist, etc. You talk to Rick Rubin. So let me give his example first. When he has a musician who's stuck, great musician, but they've developed performance anxiety about songwriting for whatever reason, he will say, do you think you could get me one sentence or maybe 2 words that you like by tomorrow? That's it, 2 words. Can you do that for me? And he gives them a micro assignment. Best writing advice that I probably ever received, and I've received a lot of good writing advice, but I can get myself really wound up because I expect perfection to flow from my fingertips like magic, and that never happens. So then I beat the hell out of myself, and that makes me less likely to put pen to paper in the first place. I'll procrastinate, which is why if you write 2 crappy pages per day, you've won the day. That's a successful writing day. And that does a few things. It helps you to maintain enthusiasm because you're constantly winning. And of course, on many days, you'll write more than 2. You'll get to 2, then you go to 5 or to 10. But if you're on an off day, you write 2 crappy pages, even if you never use it, it's a successful day. And that, I think, for longer term projects and extended creativity is really important.
You know, you have to have the patience, you have to find beauty in the process of building something, and find beauty in the journey and understand that the end result is not really the most beautiful part of it. And so it's having that patience.
I mean, it takes a long time to become an overnight success, right? And I think for the both of us and everybody we know that we admire and who's achieved anything, they've been at this a long time and they've been talking at it. And by the way, they weren't great at the beginning. Go watch early interviews of Steve Jobs, right? Early interviews of Steve Jobs are fantastic. He's terrible. And he actually in one of them says, I need to go throw up because he's so nervous about talking on camera. He's terrible. And the point is he practices and he practices and he practices, he gets better, but he does it out loud. And I think the idea of hiding until it's perfect, it's a fool's game. I think you put yourself out there, you start, you practice out loud, then you get feedback, and you grow.
You counterpunch, you adjust.
You put it out there.
I would say the one thing that you may be referring to that I talk about a lot is it's tough to come out the gate at 22 and say this is the definitive thing, here's my advice. I think talking to the world about your truth,
but what you believe,
correct, is the game.
Is the game.
You know, your point of view on the world and like what you believe and where you come from, that's gold. Your process. That's why I talk a lot about documenting instead of creating. It's just your truth. But I agree with you. I mean, there's no substitute for doing the amount of people that wait for the perfect thing and then never do anything.
You know, the most beautiful thing when you're young and you think you have something to contribute is to admit that you don't know everything, admit that you're learning.
Trying to get people to think, like, wait a minute, am I doing the thing that I want to do? Or is it cultural pressure, pressure from my parents, pressure from the mortgage and the family to do some other thing? Right. And it just, lo and behold, there's a lot of people for whom that has been a bigger shaper of what they're on their path to do, as opposed to the thing that they actually want to do. It's certainly, there's always a feeling, and that's the thing that we are taught to ignore feelings. I think we've done a terrible job culturally, not just in the US, but in the West. We've done a very bad job of cultivating one's desire, expectation, ability to listen to our intuition. And it was, you know, we all have different paths, some through sort of grief, some through achievement, some through struggle, to start to listen to, we all have that compass.
Because often in life, we know what to do, but we don't do what we know. And another way that's been said is common sense isn't always common practice. And sometimes our intuition is screaming at us, but the demands of the day, the distractions in life are pulling our mind in a million different directions. And our psychology, our brains, our intuition is so drained that sometimes that noise makes it really hard for us to listen to our own hearts. There was this scene in this movie, Shawshank Redemption. And it's very symbolistic in a lot of ways, a lot of metaphors into the scene. And it's shortly after Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins' character, escapes out of prison. And he literally climbs through a river of shit to come out to freedom on the other side. Listening to Morgan Freeman's character, Red, talk about how much he missed his friend and how much the place had changed without him there. But then he said this line, Some birds just can't be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. That's you. So if you're hearing this and you've been in a cage and imprisoned by your circumstances, your life, habits, patterns, environment, relationships, whatever it is, realize you're too big for that. And it might take climbing through a river of shit for you to find your freedom. But the journey is worth it. Don't let anything stop you. Keep pushing.
Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. This guy is very fulfilled. That's why he works 24 hours a day. His whole hustle is that it fulfills him. Same thing with me. If you don't find what fulfills you, all the achievement's worthless. Money is not going to make you happy. It'll give you resources, it'll give you tools, but you got a 2 million year old brain that's always looking for what's wrong because it's trying to make you survive. If you're going to override that, you've got to learn what it is that's going to fulfill you most. And if you discover that and you pour all of your juice into that, forget the money. The money will be fine, but what you really will have is an extraordinary life. That's what this character has done for himself because he lives it every single day. I live it every single day. There's nothing short of that that's going to give you what you want.
The question is, what filters are you using to make decisions? Are you making decisions based on the financial rewards? Are you making decisions based on how easy the work will be? I mean, and so if you're only chasing the mighty dollar, then you will have jobs that'll pay you a little more than the last, but are you enjoying yourself? And I talked to a guy recently who was he's in bad shape. Like he really hates his life and he's really depressed and he doesn't know what to do. And so we were going through all his old jobs, and I said, give me a job that you've loved. And he hadn't. Every single job he's chosen out of college, he picked because of the money. And if something offered him more somewhere else, he took it, regardless. And the amazing thing is he plateaued, because if you're only chasing the result, if you're only chasing the thing that makes it easy, right? Then eventually you will get bored, or they'll get bored of you, right? And you plateau. In other words, chasing the almighty dollar, if that's your only thing, it eventually flattens out. Whereas if you're chasing the thing that excites you, the human beings to be around, the work that excites you, the stuff that you can get passionate about, the irony is you'll actually make way more, right? Because you're excited and they appreciate your excitement and they reward your excitement and you're better at your work because you want to work harder and all of that stuff. You don't have to strain to work harder. So decision making is simply a matter of filters, and so I've made decisions in my life that I would rather be happy than right. I'd rather do good than get rich. And so the decisions I make put me in positions where when I leave any engagement, when I leave any meeting, I feel that I've contributed, right? Rare are the times anymore where you walk away going, just think of the money, just think of the money, think of the money, because it doesn't feel nice. And the experience I have, I don't enjoy traveling to them and I don't enjoy traveling home. Where if I have an amazing experience, I am looking forward to getting there and I'm excited when I leave. Yeah. So it's just decision making is just a matter of what filters you use.
Because this is what messes this up. You can be a billionaire and be miserable.
This is the game. This is the operating system, baby.
We're the only creatures on the planet that can think a thought and make ourselves miserable, or think a thought and make ourselves euphoric. So take control of your mind.
The brain is kind of like a muscle. And specifically, there's a part of the brain that we really care about. It's the part that's doing self-control. So if you think about it, in a simple way to look at it is that you start running. You go running. The first mile, your legs say, let's run. And the brain that controls them says, let's run. And another part of the brain says, no problem at all. After 1 mile, your legs say, it's a little bit painful, but the other brain that controls them say, keep going. After 10 miles, the legs say, I want to quit. And the other part say, no, keep going. And there's like a battle there. And at some point, you're going to break. Now, when you're going to break depends on a lot of things. Your muscles, but it also depends on this kind of control coming from the front of your brain that overrides your experience, your pain.
There's a banality to being an entrepreneur. There is a willingness to suffer to being an entrepreneur, to being a great mom. Like whatever it is that you're trying to do, suffering is involved. And it literally, like the being able to extend your break point is what it's about.
We all face those moments. When the alarm buzzes at 6 a.m., we set the alarm at 10 p.m., and suddenly in the morning we're different people. Like we're not the person who wants to wake up anymore, and it's the same brain that set the alarm at 10 p.m., but now suddenly at 6 a.m. we're not the same guy. This is a moment like that. We have to make a choice. When we're going running, when we're about to eat the cake, there's like a tasty cake and we're on a diet. And we say, oh, I shouldn't eat the cake, but there's a conflict. And now is the moment where those two parts of the brain come to life And the more you know about yourself, the more you're aware of those situations, the better you can do in controlling them. And the more you know about yourself, you can do better in all of those tasks. And that's kind of the ultimate thing. That's why we're here. To know that it's in your capacity to change.
When you want to excel at something, what must you have? Did I just hear somebody say passion in the audience? You know what passion is? Passion is an emotion. It's an emotion without an action. Passion will get you nowhere. Inner drive will get you nowhere unless you act on it. You have to act on your passion. You have to act on your inner drive. Don't let those feelings stay inside of you. You got to know what to do with them. You got to know how to make them work in order to get what you want. Don't keep it inside. Remember, the mind controls the body. The body does not control the mind. What makes these guys special and successful in everything they do is not their physical gifts, it's their mental toughness. They have the ability not to think when everyone else is thinking. Decide, commit, act, succeed, repeat.
I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to fall over, make a mistake. That oftentimes cripples people on the onset of getting into anything. The first time I ever picked up the DJ decks was horrible now, but I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of that feeling. It actually propels me and works quite the opposite. Being able to look at an opportunity and go, is that going to take me further or not? You know, some people don't have that. You won't. It's something you develop. You know, that's why most times out of 10, any head of a company has been doing it for a long time, because they inherently can make a decision in the blink of an eye. But you have to learn that. The other thing that's important, I think, is to keep your head down. You know, keep your head down. Like when I swim, I've got 25 laps. Guaranteed, if I look up and start counting those laps, I'm petered out by 15. If I put my head down and keep working away and work at technique, work at internal rhythm, work at, I hit that length, I don't even know what length I'm on, guarantee you I'll look up and it'll be 20 and 3 more to go. And that's a very simple device, but I think people find themselves incrementally checking how far they've got. And that, you know, when you compare it to anybody else or whatever, it's just it's a recipe for disaster. Just keep banging on, you know, that's the most important. I think mountain climbers would probably tell you the same thing, you know, there's no point looking. The difference between climbing 100 feet and climbing 500 feet is a point of view. You won't know you're at the top until you get there, pal. And that's what you need to remember. So that's, you know, part of my mechanism of dealing with sort of, you know, just getting there. Just don't look down.
All right, success mindset number 3. I don't run from mistakes, I learn from them. Oh, man, this is the great killer of dreams. The idea that making a mistake is a mistake. Think about this for a minute. Can you really think of one invention? Don't tell me, just try to think of it. Think of one invention that's been made without a series of potentially catastrophic mistakes, mishaps, or misfires, leading to that idea being thrust out into the world. Mistakes are the necessary requirement in order to improve oneself, in order to improve one's business, in order to improve your thoughts. You have to be mistaken in order to eventually be corrected. A lot of us see these mistakes as bruises to our ego, like I made this mistake, so it means this about me, or like I did this wrong, so I'm not going to do this other thing right. We take a lot of ownership for these mistakes, and then at the same time, when we end up doing well, sometimes we don't attribute that to ourselves. We say, oh, well, that was lucky, or oh, this other person helped me. We have a hard time attributing where our success comes from and why we fail. But what you need to understand is that your mistakes aren't you. Your mistakes are singular events that, in the end, don't really mean anything. But what they can do for you is they can teach you. Mistakes can teach you what you're doing wrong, obviously, but mistakes can also teach you what you're doing right. And when you tune in to the mistakes that you're making, you can chart a path that avoids them and also moves towards the things that you want. But you have to be open to learning from them first. And once you are, it's going to be much easier to navigate the world in a way that makes sense to you and also gets you the results that you want. Successful people know that mistakes are essential to moving forward, and sometimes they even seek out mistakes, right? This is a contrarian way of thinking. They seek out mistakes in order to get success faster because they know that every mistake they make now is one mistake they won't make later. In fact, when I was interviewing the founders of Barefoot Wine, which is one of the biggest wine brands in the world, they said that they actually kept a journal of all the mistakes they made and wrote them down so they'd never make them again. And you can bet by the end of their careers, that journal was full of things that they did once, maybe twice, but that once they eliminated those things from their routine, well, they were just left with a flawless procedure. So look for the mistakes and learn from them, but never be scared of them. Never feel bad if you make them, because you're supposed to be making them. That's the point.
There are positives in every situation that we go through. And even in the entrepreneurial world, we're trained. I think that's another thing that's really benefited me is like failure. I think it's more of our egos that we don't want to say like failure exists. It's like, no, failure doesn't exist. It's a learning moment. No, you screwed up, you failed. Like, let's just own that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And yes, you should learn from those failures. But the things that I learned through the abuse that I went through were incredibly powerful. I mean, my ability to withstand life, like, good luck knocking me down. Like that's not an ego or a cocky thing. It's just like, good luck. And what's cool is I didn't know any of this stuff when I was a kid until I was about 16, 17. I started like reading encyclopedias on the human body and mind. But even then we had no clue. And now like all this science is coming out about energy and positive and negative and chemical hormones being stored in the brain and like memories actually releasing endorphins, like all this stuff's happening. And it's like, wow, cool. Like the monks had something. Like, you know, it's like we're like going and proving these very, 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 very ancient rituals to be scientifically like accurate. And who knew where they got their inspiration? But regardless, we're now proving that this rewriting of the story, this telling, you know, yourself and believing something different literally changes the chemical makeup in your body, which releases different hormones and different endorphins, which then allows you to have a different, you know, complete outlook. If you're unconfident, you don't feel sexy and you don't feel this way, that's how you're going to come across. Not because that's what you really maybe are with skin and, you know, skin and all that, but that's the chemicals that you're releasing.